Donnie and Dolly. The team is supported by ableauctions.ca. Closing your business? We can help. And King of Floors, your vinyl, laminate, and engineered flooring superstore.
Donnie and Dolly, a presentation of Able Auctions and King of Floors. It is Wednesday, and all of our guests today, including Noodles and Jeff Paterson, who's just ahead, sponsored by the O's marketing team at Royal LePage. They will find your next home in Nanaimo, Nanoose Bay, Parksville, and Qualicum Beach. Find out more at wearerealestate.com. The O's marketing team at Royal LePage. We got the Ovechkin clip, or are we going to run that later? It's not great quality, but
it's not great quality.
I've built it up.
You built
so
it.
Let's see if the listeners and the viewers
agree. You pumped it up
agree.
so much, people want to see it.
Jeff Paterson joining us now. How are you, sir?
I'm good, Donnie. Hi, Dolly.
Jeff, today's poll question is very simply: which one of these Canuck players should the team buy out? Because if the Stanley Cup Final ends tonight, the first buyout window would start 24 hours after that. 4 choices: Roussel, Virtanen, Louis, Holtby. Holtby saves them the most money, $3.8 million next season. Virtanen second at $2.5. Do you have any opinion or thoughts on that?
Well, I'm fully expecting that the Canucks will buy Jake Virtanen out.
Okay.
I guess they're sitting and waiting on the findings of the independent investigation and perhaps to see if the criminal investigation leads anywhere as well. I guess there's an outside chance that there would be a mechanism whereby the Canucks could void Jake Virtanen's contract and not have to pay him a dime. But even before the events that led to him taking this leave, I think it felt like his time here was done, even though he had a year left on his contract. So this would kind of be the last straw. But even before that, the disappointment of the season, the fact that they're in the cap crunch they are, and they can utilize this mechanism that allows them to get out with only paying a third of what's left on his contract based on his age. To me, it feels like a no-brainer. It feels like it's time for the Canucks to move on. I don't know where things will go from Jake Virtanen, but from a Canucks perspective, that's the mechanism, and that's the buyout that I certainly expect them to trigger. But it's been interesting, guys, listening to Jim Benning at his most recent public media availabilities, where he's talking about buyouts plural. I don't know if he's talking abstractly about the idea of buyouts or, if in his mind, and he's got the green light, that there might be a second one for this hockey club. So we know that last year in the offseason, buyouts weren't an option. The tap seemed to have been turned off, but, we saw them spending money on Thatcher Demko and Tanner Pearson, and obviously Travis Green got his extension, and Ian Clark. They've been starting to spend a little bit more money. It kind of feels like Jim Benning is going to have license to do a few of the things that he wants to do here in the offseason. And if there are 2 buyouts that he thinks can free up some money and give him a little bit more flexibility, then, let's see. But as you said, Donnie, 24 hours after the cup is presented, that buyout window opens. I would think that they would do the Virtanen move relatively quickly. There isn't a race to get these buyouts done, but at the same time, I would think that they would want a little bit of certainty on how much money they've got to work with in the offseason and those types of things. So, we'll see how it goes, but certainly the Jake Virtanen one seems like something that is just in the best interest of the hockey club at this stage, and we'll see if there's another one to accompany it.
Game 5 of the Stanley Cup Final tonight in Tampa Bay. Lightning, of course, up 3-1 on the Habs. One player that's getting some heat, even though they won the other night, in Montreal, with the Habs, is Tyler Toffoli. What do you make of his 8-game goalless drought?
Yeah, a little surprised, quite frankly, just based on the season that he had. And look, we all know the story of the scoring against the Canucks, but he scored against other teams too. He was Montreal's leading goal scorer in the regular season, and he had a decent run earlier in the playoffs, but the tap seemed to have been turned off. And, when you think of the way that Montreal deploys that Philip Deneau line and has very little in the way of offensive expectations, they take the hard matchups, and in theory that would free up Toffoli and his line mates to see more favorable matchups and get after it as far as scoring. It just hasn't happened. And yet here are the Montreal Canadiens still alive. They found a way the other night. They're in tough. Tampa's at home. Tampa's got 3 more cracks at this. a lot's been made of the fact that Tampa hasn't lost back-to-back games in these playoffs. You got to go back to last year. This is a stacked team designed to win, the defending champs. I think Tampa will get it right tonight. But if Montreal can find a way to grind out another victory, then it gets a little bit interesting as they have to go back to Montreal. You just keep thinking that every night is another opportunity, that Toffoli's too talented, he's had too good a season, that eventually he is going to score. But I am surprised, and I'm imagining that he's feeling a little bit of heat because he knows what he means to that hockey club. And so we'll see what happens tonight. It can't go on a whole lot longer for him and the Habs. I can't imagine they're going to win the series if a guy like Tyler Toffoli isn't contributing even a little bit of offense.
Jeff, when we watch the playoffs this deep into it, everybody always says, "How far are the Canucks? How where do they got to improve?" When you watch the playoffs right now, what are the Canucks missing, and what do they got to get to be some of these elite teams?
They need an awful lot, and this Nate Schmidt stuff that won't go away, and you guys have talked about it, but that just complicates matters because we already knew that the defense needed, not just cosmetic changes. It needs some real help, and I don't know what's going to happen with Nate Schmidt, and if the reports are true that the Canucks have basically told him that they're going to work on a deal. What is the return on a player like that with 4 years left at $6 million per? Can they make a swap for a player that's out of favor somewhere else, but at that same sort of price point that can step in and play, or are they trying to, find a player at half that value and try and save a little bit of money that they can use elsewhere? There's such a long to-do list for the Vancouver Canucks, and I guess for me, I look at the defense, and I look at that Montreal defense, and I know we're at a point in time where everybody talks about modern puck-moving defensemen, and they've got these big four pillars that defend the front of the net so well. And then the Tampa side, it's the ridiculous depth that David Savard and Sergachev are on the third pair of the Tampa Lightning. It's crazy to me. Nobody talks about Ryan McDonough still going strong and, plays a ton for them in a bunch of different situations. It's the depth of that. It's the depth of the Tampa team, but the more I watch them, the depth on defense to have guys like Savard and Sergachev as your third pair, it just boggles the mind.
Jeff, you guys talked to on Harrison Price, Ryan Johnson, the GM of Abbottsford, the other day. Do you get a feeling because, hey, look, I expect attendance to be good in Abbottsford, but at the end of the day, you also have to have a very competitive team. What is your feeling about Abbottsford after talking to Ryan Johnson?
Yeah, he's remarkably positive about things. I know that that's his job, and to sort of pump up the players and the prospects they've got. I think we have to be honest that most of the Canucks' really good prospects have bypassed Utica.
That's
it. There isn't a ton on the farm. And even a guy like Jonah Gadjevich, who had a terrific season, I think we have to be honest, and Ryan admitted as much, that, with the taxi squad situation, most teams' best third-string goaltenders weren't in the AHL. They were on taxi squads. And a lot of veteran defensemen that Gadjevich would normally match up against, they were on taxi squads. They weren't in the AHL. Ryan Johnson, he was pretty candid. He called it a watered-down AHL this past season. Now, Gadjevich did the hard work. He scored the goals. You can't take those away from him. But, guys, if you look at the offensive statistics for the team in Utica, Lukas Jasek, among Canuck prospects, led the Comets in scoring. He just signed in Finland. Gadjevich could very well get selected by Seattle. Seattle's taking somebody from the Vancouver Canucks. They could go for a Jonah Gadjevich or a Cole Lind. Sven Berchi isn't in the organization anymore. He was third among Canuck property pieces down on the farm. And Carson Folk, once you start to strip away some of those other guys, that leaves you with the Carson Folks of the world. And, I think they're still high on Will Lockwood. But there isn't a whole lot there. So I'm really curious to see what they do in terms of tweeners, trying to find some guys that maybe have some AHL experience and some pedigree, bring them in to sort of bolster the lineup. I think Mikey DiPietro is going to be the most popular guy out in Abbotsford. He's going to play a ton. Ryan Johnson, we asked him how much he thought DiPietro might play, and he said, well, we've got a 68-game season, and if you asked Mikey, he'd say he'd want 68 starts. Obviously, that's not going to happen, but they're setting goal. But beyond that, I think there are a lot of holes and a lot of question marks about what the product on the ice is going to look like in Abbotsford. So there's all this excitement about bringing the farm team home, but in terms of the on-ice product, it's going to be interesting. I mean, it's going to be an interesting offseason for the Canucks in the way that they populate their NHL roster. But I'm also really curious to see the trickle-down effect and what that means for guys that are going to suit up and play for the Abbottsford. I guess we'll find out on Friday if it, in fact, the Abbottsford Canucks.
Before we let you go, Jeff, I know you love your tennis. I'm not sure how Felix is doing right now, but Denis Shapovalov advances to the semis at Wimbledon. Just your thoughts on that accomplishment. 5-set win today.
Yeah, it was awesome. I was up early and watched almost all of it. I think I got to it in the second set, and in the fifth set, tied at 4. Just an incredible game. He finally broke. He had 4 opportunities, and it was the break that he needed. And it's those moments, right? Like, the match is on the line or right there deep in the fifth set, and he dug down and was able to break his opponent and then serve it out for the win. So good for him. I mean, it's an incredible story. He's 0-6 against Djokovic, but Djokovic can't play forever. Like, at some point, there is going to be a changing of the guard in men's tennis. Roger Federer got bounced in straights, and there's some talk that maybe that's it for him at Wimbledon at the very least. So, no, this has been terrific to have 2 Canadians this deep into the second week of Wimbledon. It's exciting stuff. And, Felix is he's deep in the third now, basically on serve. So let's see if he can pull this one out. I mean, imagine that. If you had 2 semifinals, 4 players, and 2 of them were from this country, would be an incredible accomplishment. So even if Felix doesn't get there, Chapo playing for a spot in the final, come on, that's really good stuff.
Yeah, Felix tied 1-1 in the third, as you mentioned. Hey, Jeff, thanks so much for this. Hockey and tennis. Can't beat that. Thanks so much.
All right, boys. Thank you.